My name's Ollie Jones. I am the CEO and co-founder of SWAMP, and we are a full-service, independent brand experience agency powered by immersive theatre. And although we use immersive theatre as an umbrella term, we're inspired really by immersive theatre and fringe theatre and gaming and the general can-do attitude of the people that you find working in those worlds and on those projects, some of whom I'm sure are in the room today. Our company really is a mix nowadays of theatre makers and brand experience professionals who combine their skill sets to deliver award-winning brand experience work all over the world. I'm going to spend some time talking to you all today about the meeting point of entertainment, specifically theatre and immersive theatre, and brand experiences, and how these two streams played an intersecting role in our company's story, and how immersive theatre inspired our company, saved our company, and still defines what our company is today and sets it apart. Great. So a little bit about me and my background. I am a theatre studies graduate. I'm not from the brand experience world at all originally. And it was at university that I met my business partner, Clem. There we are, 20 years apart. After graduating, I spent a long time, and I still do actually, working as a writer and a performer and a creative. I did that individually. I did that as part of my beloved comedy writing collective called Kill the Beast with Clem. And I was also lucky enough to do a couple of stints on different projects at Punch Drunk and Punch Drunk Enrichment, which was an amazing experience. And Clem was there too. So we're quite intertwined, and we spent our 20s bouncing around from project to project, many of which I should say were just passion projects with no real end goal in sight or any promise of financial reward whatsoever. And as we were doing this, we began looking around the landscape, and we saw that there was a lot happening in the world of brand experiences that seemed to be borrowing from very heavily the skill sets that we were seeing exhibited in theatre and immersive theatre, which piqued our curiosity. To start with, back in those days, about 8 years ago, we didn't really know what a brand experience technically was, but we saw them described as, at times, immersive and powerful storytelling experiences that were linked to a brand. And honestly, time and time again, we were kind of bowled over by the clear lack of theatre in any of them, despite these buzzwords. And we'd studied theatre and live performance and design, audience engagement, storytelling, capturing people's imagination and giving them a moment to remember. And it struck us, that's what we've been doing for years. And I don't know why we thought this, probably just the same blind optimism that tells you should wrap your head in bandages and sign up to write an Edinburgh Fringe show 3 months before the Fringe opens. But we thought that we could do it better than what we were seeing based on what we knew. So in 2016, we founded the company, and it wasn't really until late in 2017 that we got our first bit of brand experience work. So with nothing traditionally legit to springboard from as providers of brand experiences, we initially chose the name Swamp Motel, and we did that because after a cursory glance around the internet at our various competitors, we saw that glossy showreels and long list of prestigious clients were the norm, and we didn't have either of those. All we really had was some decent reviews from Broadway Baby and 3 weeks from the Fringe a couple of years before. And it turns out nobody outside of Edinburgh in the month of August cares about those whatsoever. So in lieu of any of this empirical credibility, we decided to take on an air of mystique. Our website at the time looked a bit like this. It was just a creepy-looking motel with a flickering Swamp Motel neon sign. And that's because we didn't have anything to show, so we wanted people to ask, what is Swamp Motel? What are they responsible for? What is that world they've created around their website? The only way to contact us at the time was through a mysterious email address that was knock@Swamp Motel, and even our business cards at that point were little hotel key cards with magnetic strips on them. Because we thought if we don't have anything to show these potential clients, maybe there's a way we can enchant them through storytelling, through quasi-immersive websites, to at least give them something to look at and to think about. And it probably wasn't really a conscious strategic decision to do that, but we just followed our gut and were led by instinct, and that was to create, to tell a story, to do that stuff we'd been doing for years independently. And so we'd opened our gambit in the brand experience world with a light bit of storytelling. And for a long time, that's what we went out with, knocking on a lot of doors and writing a lot of speculative, creative decks, but we never secured a brief. We did eventually, after quite a long time, get our first lucky break from none other than my favorite restaurant in the world, which is Dishoom, the Indian restaurant chain. We'd found out that a director friend of ours had been in a meeting with Shamil Thakrar, who's the co-founder of Dishoom. And Shamil was explaining to our friend Ed that he was really enchanted by this idea of brand experience and immersive theatre. And he was about to launch this new restaurant in Kensington. And he was saying to Ed, like, you're a connected guy, you work in theatre, do you happen to know anyone in your circle or perhaps further afield that has an interest in combining immersive theatre and brand experience? Maybe a couple of guys that you've spoken to recently who have this exact agenda in mind. Do you know anyone? And Ed said no, and that took a little bit of fixing, but we eventually managed to get him to call Shamil back and set up a meeting. And that led to Night at the Bombay Roxy, which was Swamp's first ever immersive brand experience. It ran for 3 sold-out weeks with an extension and garnered a slew of press attention, which was exactly what the restaurant wanted. And for us, finally, we had something that we could trade off, and it was kind of the perfect case study. It was so theatrical, but also wedded really tightly to a brand and to brand values. And then for us, wheels started slowly turning and a few more projects came our way. And with, at the time, a skeleton crew and kind of criminally low salary expectations, we were able to work complete miracles on some of those early projects. And that's partly because we did everything ourselves starting out. We would pitch the idea, we would manage the budget, we wrote the script, we sourced the costume, we cast the actors, we directed the actors, we rented the vans that we then drove ourselves to the prop hire places and the furniture hire places, drove them back, we did the get in, we did the get out, we managed the stage, we ran the tech, we did the rehearsals, we did the insurance, the legal documents, the invoices, the banking, the cleaning, the client management, all of it. And it was that kind of manic naivety, that genuine bit of fringe theatre inspired gumption that was just us saying, we don't know how to do any of this, it just needs to be done, so let's figure out a way to do it. And I'm really proud to say that still in the company as it stands at the moment, that spirit has never left us. Although we do now have excellent professionals and experts managing all those various areas, there is still that spirit at Swamp that sees everyone more than happy to get stuck in with the most menial tasks if it means making the show run better. And then there's that kind of theatre and entertainment mentality where you just all really deeply care about the end product, which has been carried over. That kind of insecure need for approval that you feel when sharing something purely creative with the world doesn't go away when you're doing it for a brand. In fact, it probably intensifies because suddenly you're being paid quite a lot of money by these people with very stringent aims and objectives that they hope you'll meet. But our second project, which was for an in-house part of Verizon called Riot Studio, where we really leaned heavily into immersive theatre and probably remains the most immersive thing we've ever done, that actually won us our first industry award, which was a campaign event award for Best B2B Brand Experience. And that did many things. It was a huge boost of confidence for us, but it was also evidence that the work we were doing wasn't just fun and interesting, it was actually of an exceptional level and was delivering results for the clients, because ultimately, with this kind of thing, it's about the result, and that's what they're paying you for. And so that's kind of how immersive theatre and our background in it and all of the things quoted under that earlier banner inspired us. And now I'll tell you a bit about how it saved the company. So come 2020, we were humming along. We were a company, a staff of 4 at that point, when the coronavirus pandemic broke out, which some of you may remember. And obviously that, for us and for most of you guys, I'm sure, and for generally every entertainment professional in the world, dried up work and turned everything we'd come to expect on its head. And for the first time in a couple of years, we found ourselves back to square one. We had no briefs, we had no work, we had no money, and we didn't know what was going to happen. Ever since starting the company, we'd always dreamed that one day we'd make enough from the brand experience work to be able to finance our own independent show. And with nothing else or better to do, this kind of seemed like as good a time as ever. But we needed something that was cost effective. And so we started putting together an online experience that would ultimately become known as Plymouth Point, and the first part of our Islander trilogy, which is still online and still available to play today. Basically, we hoped not much more than this piece of R&D would be able to go in front of some clients and would say to them, listen, even though we're in a lockdown world, this is what you can do. You can still build an experience. You can still give people something to engage with. And the basic premise of Plymouth Point was a then Zoom-based missing persons mystery case, which relied as much on real places and history and internet real estate as it did on the fictionalized addendums we added in to tie the story together. And both of these elements working in tandem meant that your experience felt very uncannily real. And ultimately, it was the right product at the right time, and I do still think to this day a really clever and inventive piece of storytelling and a cracking thriller to boot. But because it was a legitimate piece of entertainment and not brand affiliated, The Guardian were the first, but people started to review it and review it very well. And suddenly there was a bit of buzz about it. And over the next couple of weeks, we were suddenly seeing more client interest in working with us on brand experiences than we've been able to muster over 3 years of doing brand experience work to date. And I think that's because they were seeing a value exchange. We were showing them a good time, and we were being helpful and offering them a break from the kind of wild confusion that the pandemic was causing for everybody. And on our end, we were able to start demonstrating directly the things that we cared so much about demonstrating. So that's lovingly crafted worlds and meaningful stories, production capabilities, outside of the box creative thinking. And all of a sudden, we weren't fighting to get into a room with clients anymore. They were contacting us because they wanted to play Plymouth Point. And we started selling quite a lot of tickets. And within 7 months, we decided to make a sequel, The Mermaid's Tongue. And shortly after that, we had 40 stage managers dotted around the world running games on our then newly designed platform, which had allowed us to move away from the limitations of Zoom. And this approach of going back to our roots and back to pure entertainment and giving people an experience brought in work. And it brought in work from Twitter and Deloitte and Prime Video, and moved us on to the next level as an established brand experience agency. And we were able then to tool up our staff and to bring in team members with an actual background in brand experience and client and agency operations. Because there had been a shift around this time. We had somehow gone from a small company of theatre makers who could do brand experiences to a full-blown brand experience agency, albeit one that did offer its own original IPs. And there were new expectations to go along with that. For example, clients and our understanding of them. Like clients, we've come to learn over the years, don't exist in a vacuum or the other end of a phone to sign off your creative deck and pay your invoices. Each one of them exists in a totally unique business ecosystem with different paths to sign off, different collaboration methods between teams, different objectives, and different priorities. And sometimes you might be lucky enough to be speaking to the decision maker or the budget holder, but often you're talking to someone who needs to take your idea and win further buy-in from within the company. And your job is as much about selling it to them in the moment as it is about packaging it up and making it easy for them to sell onwards internally afterwards. And we were suddenly having to talk this language and understand these nuances, and working hard to understand the clients that we were working with. Because and about what they specifically needed, because they never need just an event. The stuff we do is never standalone. It's always with a brand, part of a bigger picture, and that can be huge. That can be a massive global campaign. It can be more local, but it's different objectives and different agendas all interwoven into one cohesive deliverable in which the experiential part is just one section. And I think what makes us special and makes us tick as a company is that we now have all the necessary brains in-house. We have got people who come from the brand experience and client engagement world who know how to speak that language and know how to solve problems when presented by a client. But we've also got a big cohort of people who haven't been shaped by traditional agencies, but by making theatre and by making immersive entertainment, and they think creatively in those avenues. And there were new ways of working. We were much more tightly managed. We were much more objective focused and target aligned, bringing together the various teams needed to pull these events off, and working with press and working with collaborators and working with talent, and suddenly all these different types of audiences that different briefs require you to cater to at different times. The projects that we do nowadays are so much more in-depth, it would be impossible to pull them off without a team with this varied expertise. But that being said, there is crossover. My colleague Will, who's our now COO, comes from a purely theatre production background, and he's a born natural in the spreadsheet side of the business, in managing budgets, in understanding how they're run, in understanding how a company like ours now works. Another glaring difference that I've noticed in the work that we do at Swamp is how we've had to adapt to much more aggressive and pressing timelines. In all the work I was doing before Swamp, timelines and release dates were kind of one of two things. They were either very elastic or absolutely miles away, which meant that you always had time to interrogate something, to work on something, think about it further, dig into it, change your mind about it. All those normal parts of the process. With Kill the Beast, for example, we always gave ourselves a year minimum to write and rehearse a new 1-hour show. But at Swamp, deadlines are very, very different. With Plymouth Point, we wanted to get that done in 3 weeks, which we did. The lease agreement for the site for our second show, The Drop, dictated how long, dictated when that was going to open. But actually, these stringent timelines are really important and a really important thing to engage with, because they are much more applicable to brand work, because in the brand world, products are released on schedule and the corresponding marketing activity has to fit in that window, and it's a totally different place to work at. So through lockdown, we did a few digital projects. We launched Panic, a Prime Video show with an online experience, very in the mold of Plymouth Point. And for Deloitte, we did something called Internet Zero, which placed you in the digital office of an investor in a carbon neutral future. And this place was full of radio broadcasts, email exchanges, pitch meetings, food delivery services that you could interrogate and choose how best to spend your investment fund within a green future to understand how we best shape a green future. But ultimately, after lockdown, thanks to our choice to stick to our immersive roots but go digital, we came out of lockdown much bigger. We were a team of 14, up from 4, and we had more clients than we'd ever had before. But we were then known as the digital guys, the people who had done Plymouth Point, and really we were not. We were live entertainers, and so we found that we had to re-establish ourselves again. So we decided to launch a new original show called The Drop, which was an immersive escape experience, ostensibly marketed about escaping from a lift. But about 5 minutes into your show, it breaks, and real-life Swamp employee Will Herman, remember him, the COO, comes to fix your show, and he's murdered right in front of your eyes. And suddenly the show becomes about escaping the escape room, foiling this armed robbery, and escaping into the streets of London to meet a shady contact. And we were buoyed by the fact that Plymouth Point had gone so well that we felt really justified in doing another original show, because we were also feeding two beasts. We were feeding our own appetite for creativity and experimentation and innovation, and also the new business requirements by giving clients something to do and to talk about. And we loved this show, The Drop. We were so happy with it. And if a second COVID Christmas hadn't come along, who knows what future it might have had. But ultimately, it served its purpose. It garnered a slew of brilliant reviews and opened more client doors for us. And again, that's because brands were being attracted purely by the creative on offer rather than just our own brand work portfolio. But I should say our track record in the brand world was also good. We've won several awards, we've beaten gigantic companies to some of these trophies and worked on some high-profile campaigns. So it's not purely the free tickets that we were able to offer that was winning people over, but it was nonetheless an extremely powerful proof of concept for what could be achieved by a brand. And we were able to show that to clients several times over. And thanks to The Drop, we'd proven ourselves in a live capacity now. And we were able to show this to clients firsthand, which is really beneficial because it can be very politically difficult to invite client A to come and see client B's activation. So we can't always show people the work we do firsthand without a vehicle like The Drop live. And then projects in the live era have been many and varied. Get the V was pure immersive adrenaline. The point of difference being the audience on one day was Twitch streamers, which meant that we had millions of views of it overnight. The Continental was a press launch event where we plunged them into a very real world of 1970s New York for an overnight stay in a hotel. We've also done stuff like organizing a flash mob to happen in Leeds city centre. We did this working alongside Havas Play, and this was just a tiny part of the massive project that was EE Game Day 2023. And another really cool one we did recently was trapping Vicky McClure and the cast of ITV's Trigger Point in the back of a van with a very authentically recreated and convincing explosive device that had to be diffused in the proper way, alone in the dark against a timer. And again, with this, everything was filmed for content afterwards because that post-event amplification is so important. But I think the reason that amplification works and why our projects tend to be such a hit with the attendees and the audience and therefore the post-event audience is because they are all designed around what we want people to feel. In other words, what can we do with the tools of theatre? How do we make theatre work in this setup? And we do integrate the brand objectives, of course, but I think what sells our thinking is the fact that our audience, and that can be creators, the public, the press, influencers, they're all going to have a visceral experience which will linger with them for a long time afterwards. And in a way, that's what we set out to fix when we started the company. We wanted to do brand stuff that truly was immersive and truly did leave you feeling something. And the final thing I just want to talk about is how these two disciplines coexist and what we've learned from each of them. They've offered us places to experiment, and sometimes we've been able to create and innovate something in one of our originals, which we've then been able to employ in a brand experience. And equally, at times, we've been able to leverage our consumer audience to engage with a brand activation. And as I've hopefully made clear, independent immersive experiences have meant everything to us and defined how we work and what we do. But without, in our case anyway, without the brand experiences, they would never, apart from Plymouth Point, which is a bit of an exception, but none of the others would ever have happened. And that's because running a business that does this stuff but also works with brands has provided us with a team and with infrastructure and with storage and with technical kit and a united vision. And the parameters within which we operate are now complex and advanced and theatrical. And And often theatre is a compromise, or you have to let go of an idea because of practicalities that are out of your control, but that's okay because we always subconsciously ground ourselves in the reason that we started the company, which is theatre is the secret to make people feel. And for Swamp, as it stands, neither our brand work nor the originals could exist without the other. They're symbiotic. And that link that makes everything tick is the same fundamental belief that we had when we came up with our spooky motel. And that is that to truly make a great immersive experience and to start to make people feel something, you have to take your audience on a journey. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Good. My name's James. That was great, Ollie. And I, listening to Ollie, started to think of why I'm here as well as Ollie. There's a lot of symmetry between our stories. I run Les Enfants Terribles theatre company, and for us, those last two words are really important, theatre company. I've been running it for 22 years, and then I guess doing experimental and immersive work since 2010, 2012. So we didn't start out as an immersive theatre company. A lot of people might think we are an immersive theatre company, but we're not. We're a storytelling theatre company. Whether we do outside shows, indoor shows, stage shows, immersive shows, what's key to us is storytelling. And that's why we got into immersive and experimental. We wanted to put storytelling at the forefront of immersive theatre back in the day in 2010. I am a director, theatre director, used to be an actor, not so anymore, and a producer as well. So I run the company, but I also direct the shows as well. And I think the clicker is here and a little bit of a trailer to show some of our experiential work and stage shows, immersive shows. How did we open ourselves up to these opportunities? We did a show back in 2015, which was called Alice's Adventures Underground. It was, obviously as the title suggests, an immersive version of Alice in Wonderland. Again, like I said at the beginning, we got into this and we wanted to do this show because we thought we wanted to put storytelling at the forefront of immersive experiences. We wanted to challenge the audience to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, a narrative journey and an arc, just like any book, any film, any TV series, whatever. This is why we did this. Initially, we did actually think we wanted to do a Roald Dahl property, but the rights are really hard with that property, and then we thought, what other world is applicable to immersive? And I think that's a really, really important question. Why should this show be immersive? Sometimes less, I guess, successful immersive shows don't ask that question. Like I said, we do stage shows, outdoor shows, immersive shows, and for us, Alice should be an immersive show. You want to go to Wonderland, okay? I want to go to Wonderland. We did this show in 2015. It did very well, got nominated for an Olivier. We brought it back in 2017, and we took it to Shanghai, where it ran for 2 years. And hopefully it will be back next year as well. But the reason why I bring up this show is because this was a gateway for us with brands. We were very lucky that this was a bit of a calling card for us. Lots of people came to see this show when we did it at the Vaults for 6 months in 2015, and they saw it, they loved it, they liked it, and they came to us and said, hey, have you ever thought about doing an immersive experience for Toyota or for Disney or for any of these brands? Very, very lucky. But at the same time, I think what Ollie was saying, which is very true, this was a bit of a calling card for us. People saw that storytelling was paramount to us as a theatre company, and they wanted us for their brand, for their experience. And I think whenever I'm in one of those rooms with a brand or with an agency, that's the first thing I say to them. There are millions and amazing and better than us event agencies and companies that do this. If you're coming to us, we're a theatre company. And we're going to put storytelling at the heart of what we do. If you don't want that, that's great, that's fine. Go to someone else, go to an events company. And I think that's really key and important to stick to who you are. Ollie talked about that as well at the beginning. And I suppose that's what we say. We're going to put some theatre at your event. We are going to have this story. And always, and I'll get onto that in a little bit, clients are usually excited by this at the very beginning, and then towards the end, or when you're getting towards the experience, that's when they get really, really nervous. But this success essentially put us on the map a little bit in terms for brands to say, hey, come and have a go and come and do an immersive show for us, or an immersive experience. But it did start a little bit before that. Round about 2010, we did a musical show called The Vaudevillains, and this was at Latitude Festival. And Latitude came to us, I think it was 2010, and they said, we want this show to have a bit of a life after the show. Can you do something in the woods after the show? And no one was using the word immersive back then. They were experimental or anything like that. And we said, yeah, cool, we'll do something in the woods afterwards. So after the show, which was this huge musical set in a cabaret and burlesque club, we opened up the doors, green screen again. We opened up the doors and we invited the audience into the woods. Now, into the woods, we had DJs, we had performers, trapeze artists, and we had the party basically in the forest. We didn't know, but someone from Edward Sharp and the Magnetic Zeros, which is, if any of you guys know that band out there, their manager saw the show, and then he approached us and said, we're bringing the band over to London for the first time ever for their gigs, and would you do something different and launch the band for a 4-day gig at the Vaults, or at least the venue opposite the Vaults? And we said, yeah, that sounds really cool. So we worked with the band, Edward Sharp and the Magnetic Zeros, and there's a few images here on the left, to create this Wild West on Mars, their brief, not ours, to bring their band and their, I guess, what they stood for to life. Off the back of that, we had a few agencies that saw that, loved it, and they said, hey, come and pitch for us. That was really cool. Why don't you come and do something for us? And we did a few pitches, and we did some more pitches, and we did some more pitches, and we got none of them. And we kept on pitching with this. Luckily, this agency kept calling us back. One of them did land. We did this Heineken event, which was probably the first brand experience that we did in Barcelona, which was really, really exciting for the Champions League semi-final, where they brought 15 influencers, again, no one was using that word back in 2012, I think it was, to the Champions League semi-final. And what they wanted to do is to recreate the advert that they were running at the same time, which was the road to the final. So with 15 people, we picked them up at the airport, and various escapades happened to them as they were getting to the new camp. Their bus broke down, and just happened to be a circus bus was passing them by, full of our performers, picked them up, and in there they were drinking Heineken. And then, of course, they got arrested by the police, actors, and then shoved in riot vans, and then off to the local police cell, until the police had realized that they were going to the new camp. So they said, okay, why don't we take penalties, and if you score them, we'll let you go. They scored penalties, but then they were left in the middle of nowhere, next to a beach. They walked round a corner, and suddenly there was a wedding there with about 200 guests, also our actors. It was a Russian billionaire who was actors again, having this wedding, but the priest hadn't turned up. So then we said, hey, why don't you come and marry these two people? They married the two people, really excited. I'll get you to the new camp. Don't worry, I'll get you to the new camp. Speedboats turned up, into the speedboats, round the headland. Helicopters were there, into the helicopters, and then landed in the new camp. A lot of organization, a lot of planning, but the best thing that happened about that event is that those 15 people, when they finished that experience, they said, I don't want to watch this football match, I want to live in that world, which was really nice for us. But that kind of had a bit of a snowball effect. We loved doing that. We loved, obviously, creating that experience. How did we evolve to provide these brand offerings? So basically, there we go. Similar to what Ollie said, initially in these early days, we're, I guess, children of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. That's how I learned to be a producer, director, an actor. 22 years of going to that festival. If everyone has been there, you'll know what it's like. If you haven't, do go. But this is what's taught us a lot, the festival. But essentially, in the early days, we surrounded ourselves with a core team. We had actors, writers, directors, working with people you like. I was at a talk a little bit earlier, and someone said something very important. Surround yourself with like-minded people. Also, what's very important, surround yourself with nice people. That is stupidly important as well. We only work with nice people because it's very stressful and very hard. But this core team, over the years, essentially learned how to do these experiences, learned how to create them, learned how to work together, and learn the positives and the minuses of each other as well. This, of course, led to employment development. We learned a lot ourselves. We did learn what didn't work. And one of the people who worked for us, who's in the audience, and I won't point to her because she'll get embarrassed, she learned with us on the job as well. And eventually, we nurtured her, and she took over within the company to run these brand experiences and brand events. But essentially, we and her, we're creators and producers. We understand the logistics, but we also understand the creative. And I think that makes us slightly unique, and the same with Ollie as well. This is an invaluable process, a methodology, essentially, of what we do and how we bring these stories to life. Immersive actors. I work with a lot of actors as a director that have never worked in immersive before, and that's fine. I don't look for actors who have got that experience. What I look for is actors that want to take a risk, similar to creatives, designers, or directors, or musicians, or composers. We're looking for people that want to get on board. We're looking for people that want to collaborate. We're looking for people who want to find a team, actors that want to put themselves out of their comfort zone and try something new. There is a skill to immersive acting, 100%. When I was an actor, I'd have been terrified by it. I need a script. But some actors thrive on that. So after a while, we started working with the same people, a core team, same actors, same directors, same composers, and we built up that way. The huge advantage of that is that when the next job came along, we just ran it and knew it, and it ran like clockwork. The disadvantage of that is, how do new people break into the industry? How do they do that if people like us are just working with the same people, which is a really bad thing. So then we started to think, well, actually, these corporate and immersive events are an amazing opportunity to nurture and grow skill set. So now we start bringing people in, so deputy directors, designers, and then they can take over the next job as we grow. And that's what's happened. And of course, we've had stories where actually we've employed a director, but then the time frame is so tight, we've actually had to take over. So there's a lot of education in that. There's a lot of nurturing so that we can grow and they can grow, and we don't just work with the same old people all the time. What we wished we'd known when we started. Okay, so, and some of these points are pretty obvious, but sometimes you have to remind yourself. Brands work in a very, very different world to us, or we work in a very, very different world to brands. And that can be very challenging. There can be clashes where they don't understand us and we don't understand them. So that's always really, really important, to appreciate where they're coming from. And I always say, when it gets really stressful and sometimes I'm like, oh God, why are they doing that? Or why are they asking me to do this? I have to remind myself that they are actually doing something very different. I suppose 99% of the time when I work with brands or agencies, the client is doing this, an immersive experience, for the very first time. And that's important to remember. We may have done all these experiences over the last 15 years, and we've done quite a lot, thankfully, but for us, we may be doing them all the time, but every single one is different, and I want them to be different. I don't want them to be clockwork, we do this, we do this, we do this. I want it to create a new show. When I'm working with them, I say, I'm going to create a new theatre show. Okay, this is what we're going to do together. And that's important, the word together, collaborating, of course. But it is admirable that they're doing something different. Toyota could just say, hey, here's a car, and we could just do a launch, and isn't this car amazing? No, Toyota wanted to create, at the time, the first ever immersive drive-through car experience. So they came to us, and we worked with them in 2017 to create this experience where people went in Toyotas and drove around Printworks, which is in East London, no, not too far from here. And that was amazing. Obviously, so many challenges, but they're doing something different. Then I've got to remind myself that they're coming from a different world as they are coming from us. It can be a very, very long process. Very long process. And also, it can be budget focused. It all starts out very, very creative, but then suddenly it becomes very, very real, and then you're talking numbers the whole time. I think, hopefully for us, and Ollie talks about this as well, our Edinburgh background has really helped with that. When you go to the Edinburgh Festival as a young actor, me and another Ollie, who runs the company with me, and he didn't know what the hell we're doing, and we've got like $7,000 to put on a show. We had to be creators and budget people at the same time. So even though these might be slightly bigger, there may be a few zeros on the end of that, it can be very, very budget focused, and you have to remember that. Decisions can be painful, and very drawn out. Sometimes you're in a room with a lot of people, a lot of creatives from agencies, from clients facing brands, and they all want to put in their opinion. And sometimes those opinions can be very different to your opinions. So you have to be aware of that. You have to nurture that relationship. You have to nurture those opinions. And at the end of the day, they're paying for it. But at the same time, if they're going to come to us and they're paying us, you have to push as well. And I'm always pushing the brands. Sometimes they can get a little bit annoyed at me, but sometimes you have to say, well, actually, that's why you've got me on board. That's why you want me to do this, right? You want me to push it. Sometimes it works. Hopefully, most of the time. There is a risk. There's a risk on our side, and there's a risk for brands in doing this. And being aware of that is really, really important. But striving for this collaboration is important, really, really important. These events inevitably are pretty stressful. Sometimes you get phone calls, which is ridiculous, and they say, right, which is I think happened probably 6 months ago. Someone rang me up and said, we want to put an event in New York in 2 months' time for 1,000 people. And you're like, okay, let's just go through this. And you have to work with that, and you have to budget that, and you have to make them realize as well, like I said, we come from this world, they come from that world. And inevitably, like with that event, that didn't happen. So sometimes you do pitches, and they lead nowhere, which is pretty infuriating and also pretty upsetting. But you have to roll for another day. The other thing I think which is really important is that the client, and this has always happened, and maybe, Ollie, you felt this as well, at the start of an experience, when I'm talking to a brand agency or a client or Toyota, they're always really, really, really excited. And then as we get closer and closer, they become more and more conservative, more worried about the audience, very worried about the audience. And I've seen that 10 out of 10 times. It always, always happens. So we're prepared for this. And I suppose with that, there's a sense of hand-holding, of making sure that they're in capable hands and we know what we're doing, hopefully. But you understand that conservatism, and the other thing that I hear from them always is, this is the first time these people that are coming to the show will have been to an immersive experience. They always say that. Now, that's exciting for us, for introducing immersive to these people. And I'm really excited and really happy when they do say that, because it's great. That's what we want to do. But then it's my job as well to say, don't worry. When we did Alice, when we did Sherlock, when we did Inside Pussy Riot, a lot of people came to those shows who had never been to immersive. Really immersive, I mean, this is another talk in entirety of what immersive means and where it came from and how long it's been. But it's in its infancy, and where it can go is in its infancy. So brands are a little bit nervous about that. So I'm always aware of that, but that's a cool thing to get involved with. Okay, how does immersive background add value to our brand work? So immersive for us is about world building. And putting an audience at the forefront of a story. That's the important thing for us. When I'm creating immersive work, I always talk about the 2 R's, role and reason. That is very important for us. Who are the audience in this world? What is their reason for being there? They're the two R's. And for us, when we're creating these brand works, they're no different to our large-scale ticketed immersive experiences. Ollie said the same thing. We're creating this show. So the first thing that we do is just create it how we would create an immersive show. And we ask, what is this world? And the two R's. What is the role and what is the reason? What is the role and what is the reason for being in this world? So we ask that question at the birth of this immersive experience, whether it be brand or whether it's a ticketed event. Brands will want to create a narrative for their consumers. That's what they do. And that's what we do as theatre makers. So there is synergy, and I think that's an important thing to remember as well. What's the narrative of their story? We're very lucky that when we've worked with brands, they've never wanted to shoehorn their product, can of Heineken or whatever, into the experience. It has to be seamless. If it's not, audiences are quite intelligent. I think they know when it's a little bit product placement, and it can feel a bit painful. It's invaluable, the problem solving and working hard and adaptability. Those three things I've written down here are absolutely invaluable. That's invaluable to who we are, I guess, from our Edinburgh experience, and that is what you'll need in terms of creating these type of large kind of experiences. And also that the client kind of want new experiences, never seen before. So many times, so many brands come to us, we want to make the first this or the first that or something entirely new. And that's exciting for us as creatives, very exciting. As I said before, we are producers and we are creators. So these backgrounds and our background, and our experience with doing these huge events actually leads into our ticketed events as well. We all know immersive is a buzzword. I mean, that's a big thing that brands kind of want to latch onto as well. That's very important. Finally, what does brand work have for enhancing opportunities in our ticketed productions? So there's two pictures here of a brand experience we did for IKEA and Sonos, where they wanted to release this thing here, which is a light and a speaker. Quite bizarre, but actually, you know, why not? IKEA and Sonos, you want to do that? And they came to us and they said, we want to put this into an immersive experience. So we created this experience, because it's all about sound, where we shrunk the audience and we put them through a brain. So we built essentially like a brain, and the audience went through all these different lobes, experiencing sound in different ways. And we had these speakers built in trees, built in different, down here on the left, different lobes of the brain to kind of enhance the experience. It went really, really well. But it taught us a lot. You know, this is an amazing playground for us to be, you know, let's say it as well. Sometimes, not all the time, there's a really good budget for us to play. It's a great sandpit for us to experiment with this, experiment with the technology. And there's also experimenting with new people. So this can add a lot to us just as much as the other way around. And, you know, let's be honest about this. Sometimes it's good for finance. We're an unfunded theatre company. We're not funded by the Arts Council. So for us, navigating how we fund the next product, brand work is very important for us. Very important. Sometimes we do it and we put our name out there, and sometimes we don't. But we're always very, very proud that we're actually putting everything into these brand experiences and creating new shows. We're coming to the end of the time, as the clock says here. So I think Ollie and I wanted to leave at least 10 minutes for you guys to ask some questions to us. So we'll be handing around the microphone, and thank you very much. Should we pull our seats and bring them? Hi.
How do you manage clients' expectations of immersive? Because sometimes we get asked to make like an immersive experience for $5,000 in someone's office and it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we are very open with budget. So we have that as well. Someone come to us and say, we want this, we want that, we want that. And very early on, I think because of experience, I'm just very honest and say, you're going to get this world. This is what it's going to look like. This is what it'll be for $5,000. And so when we create budgets, we're just completely honest. And again, like I said in my talk, you know, I'm not, I guess, angry when people come to that, because they don't come from our world. They don't know what a composer charges, a stage manager charges, a costume designer, a production sound engineer. They know none of that. So what I do is I create a budget and I go through it. I'm very open. This is what a production sound engineer costs. This is what this costs. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to, I guess, realize your vision for this small budget. And then you got a choice. Either you raise the budget or we lower expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And it's a conversation that you have a lot in this line of work for the reasons you've said. Like, they don't understand the value of it in the same ways. And I think in terms of managing expectation, like the bonus you've got in that conversation, which isn't always forthcoming, is the amount of money they have. We often have the other problem where they're like, don't worry about the budget, just tell us what you think you could do, which 100% of the time ends up in us going back with an amount that they are absolutely disgusted at and don't want to spend. But yeah, I think just being clear and pointing out exactly what that money's going to buy and maybe doing a bit of creative legwork and scaling down their thinking is the best way, because the other pitfall, if you follow it through, is you're going to have overpromised them something and then deliver something very, very small and disappointing, probably, considering what they were hoping for.
Hi. Just wanted to ask a question about pitching and sort of like what the level of detail that you go into on a first round pitch, and what are the sort of key points that you would include in that, if it's like a sort of first round unpaid pitch that you're not kind of sure that you're going to win.
Yeah.
It depends, but as long as there's a good brief, we go into quite a lot of detail, because we are often not pitching against companies like Les Enfants. We're often pitching against like big media companies who are doing that thing of addressing everything in a model that they recognize. So we go really big on creative strategy, like justifying your thinking. You go big on what the creative is, but also how it's going to work. You try and be clear with the budget, and you say, this is the idea, and this is how much it will cost. Here's iteration B if you don't have enough money. Here's iteration C if you have more money. So quite a lot, and we're rarely paid to pitch as well. I think it's only happened a couple of times.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. Exactly the same. I guess the other thing about going big into pitching, which we always want to do, is just resources as well. Sometimes if we're really busy on another project, we just don't afford or have the time or capability in-house to do it all out. But usually as theatre makers, if something comes up, if we find a hook, we get really excited. And usually in a pitch, they can see our passion and why we want to do it. And I guess, there's, as Ollie said, there are loads of amazing companies out there, loads of event companies, but I guess if we're pitching, we're like, well, this is us. This is what you get. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is our back catalogue, and then go into the detail as much as possible as time and finances allow. But I'm still gutted about losing, this pitch, a couple of years ago in Miami, that, we didn't get it. You have to get over it and then think, okay, what's the next one? But it is hard.
Yeah, I think the average ratio of wins to loss is also very low as well. So yeah, it's just part of the course, really.
Hi, I've got a question. Measurement is such a big topic of conversation in brand experience. Obviously, with what you guys do, it's all around how you make press or creators or attendees feel in the moment. Do you find that you're having lots of difficult conversations with clients justifying spend around that measurement piece? Do they care? And if they do, how do you go about measuring something like the trigger point experience and showing the return on investment for brands?
Yeah, it's a funny one. It's a bit of a dark art, the measurement thing. They're like often in the brief, there's KPIs about what they want to hit. And I'd say you work really closely with the brand on achieving those, because we're clear that we're like a brand experience agency. We don't necessarily control all the amplification. So in a lot of our pitches, we say, this is the experience, and this is like the infrastructure around it that will provide those opportunities. So it's small, it's creator focused, there's hidden cameras, there's cameras here, there's action point here, and you create a list of kind of like content moments or shareable moments that will then be broadcast. And then to really hit big numbers, often you have to find a second budget to pay content creators to come in, and you essentially buy a share of those figures. Like where our stuff has worked really well is we get a big number of organic impressions and so on. But where it really escalates to the next level is where there's paid content creation as part of the overall package.
So I was interested in the sort of dual identity that both your companies talk about, and that you're a brand with a reputation yourself. Are there any kind of red lines for you? James, you mentioned product placement, for instance, or do you ever consider sort of white labeling projects and not telling anyone about them?
Yeah, it's an interesting one when it comes that way back. We probably going to get in trouble for this, but hey, why not? We did our Alice in Wonderland show. We took it to China in Shanghai for 2 years, and we were approached by Dairy Lee because they wanted to put the cheese as part of the Eat Me, and for us we were like, no, that's just, we're not going to do that. There's the red line. Dairy Lee is not in Alice in Wonderland for us. So I guess it's a nice problem to have, to be completely honest. We haven't had many brands that have said, put this in a show, put this in a show. The crossover is more when a brand has worked with us to create, it used to be, and I don't know if Ollie's found this, it used to be we're doing a brand experience and it's for invited people only. But over the last 10 years, we've done one for Stella Artois and Kraken Rum, where it was a ticketed experience for the general public. So we ran it for, I think, 2 weeks. So then the lines do blur. It is a Les Enfants Terribles show. We're transporting people to the bottom of the sea to drink Kraken Rum and meet the monster. But Kraken Rum are obviously funding it all, and they're selling their rum and their products in a bar. But they were great to work with, as were Stella. It wasn't hitting the brand over people's heads. We went through this amazing experience, and then at the end of the experience, there was a Kraken bar. So they were great to work with. So we've had a lovely experience working with brands luckily over the last 15 years.
That's interesting, because what we've tried to do a few times is get a brand to not integrate narratively, but to maybe sponsor the bar in our independent shows. Because I think we keep getting sites that don't have space for it, which is a misstep. But for kind of the opposite reason, because they can offer funding to the independent stuff. In terms of working with brands, we've never really encountered anything that's caused us any kind of drama like that. But yeah, it's interesting you talk about attaching an experience to a Kraken bar when we'd be in the market for attaching a Kraken bar to an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
We're on
you
the
so
timer.
much for joining us, and thank you
Thank
all
you very
so
much.
much for your
Thank you.
attention.